Oh my god, hi. Guess what? It's July. But that doesn't stop me from celebrating Pride a month late. Here are the books we read for Pride. When I turn them around, they will make a beautiful rainbow. And each book, each color represented an acronym in LGBTQIA. I know. Please stop. Hold your applause, please. A huge feat for a woman who can't even see in color. But we did it with a little help from my friends. Before I get into the books, as always, I'm going to give a brief history of the month celebration, where it came from, why we do it, all of that. If you are like me, you've always heard that the first Pride was a riot. Maybe you internalized that, maybe you'd never looked it up, you never understood why or how, or what the context was, or the history of it, or why we say that. Just after midnight on June 29th, police raided the Stonewall Inn, which was a queer bar, and they were looking for individuals who were not dressed according to the gender on their identification. In this time period, America had laws saying that each individual had to have a certain number of articles of clothing that represented their gender that is assigned on their identification, like their driver's license. Police would often raid queer bars looking for gender non-conforming people, trans people, non-binary people, anyone. And if this sounds familiar to you, you'll know that history doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes. So while it's not a law now to have a certain number of clothes that represent your gender, we still see time and time again trans people being the big bad guy that our administration is worried about. For no other reason other than they've accepted who they are, they live it out freely, they're happy, and they get to be whoever they want. And they are not simply a pawn in the patriarchy, they're not a toy, they're not just reduced down to whatever genitals they were assigned as either sex haver or sex object. And it feels so often that those are the only two genders. Men are the people who get to have sex with whoever they want, whenever they want. Women are what men have sex with. That's what it feels like. That was a huge tangent. Anyways, Stonewall was the first time that people fought back. These raids had been happening for weeks, days leading up to this event, and Stonewall was the first time the people in the Stonewall Inn decided that they'd had enough and that they were going to fight back. And history isn't clear on why. It could have something to do with Judy Garland's death, or a butch lesbian who had recently been arrested and called out the people looking at her getting arrested, saying, "What are you doing? Why are you just standing there?" But something snapped on June 29th in the early hours of the morning, and people fought back. And so now we have Pride. Stonewall proved to us that our joy is worth fighting back for, worth keeping and worth protecting, for something as simple as the clothes that you wear, for even the most basic part of human nature, which is to love, and that's worth fighting for. There's a lot of narratives that came out of Stonewall, and the truth is somewhere in between as to why people fought back or what snapped in them. But because of their bravery, we now have so much love and media and art that's queer and it's protected. And we finally got gay marriage. And if I think about it too much, I'm going to cry because I'm in my luteal. But I need to move on from the history before I really start crying on camera. Because of Stonewall, because of those people, we have the privilege to read books that celebrate queer joy. And so I'm going to take a minute and stop crying and talk about all these books that I read. This is like one of the first times that our monthly celebrations has been something that is aligned to me besides Women's History Month. But even with that, I wanted to shift focus away from white women and uplift women of color. But being part of the LGBT community and the bravery of the people that came before me is still so beautiful. Oh my god, freaking sap. I'm gonna lose all my street cred. Let's talk about the books that I read, okay? For L, for our lesbian book, I picked The Songs of Irie by Asha Shanti Bromfield with the Red Spine. I listened to this one on audio, which was good and bad. Good because I got to hear the songs that were written in the book. Our two main characters, Irie and Jilly, are two young girls growing up in Jamaica, and Irie's father owns a record store, and Irie wants to make her own music, so she writes down a lot of lyrics. So having it on audio, you get to hear the author sing the songs that she wrote for the book. So that was a plus. The negative, just for me personally, the author, when she moved to like dialogue, she spoke in a Jamaican accent, and so I lost some of the words there, but the context clues, I could pick them up. Anyways, about the book, it's set in 1976, and Jilly and Irie met at school. Irie's father put her into school because he wanted her to have an education. Irie's family is part of the elite and the wealthy in Jamaica that are like colonizing and what's the word? The word where rich people buy up land in poor neighborhoods and they make it so that the poor people can't afford to live there anymore. My brain turned off. They're destroying Jamaica, essentially. But Jilly's just a 17-year-old, and so she doesn't really understand what's going on. They really bond over a love of reggae. It's something that is so integral to Irie's core family values. Everything about her life revolves around reggae, and it's something that Jilly's family really looks down on as Christians, as light-skinned people who are trying to pass as white, and I think her mom is white, who see reggae as something evil and bad, and just fueling an uprising that they don't think is necessary. When the two girls break for summer in their last year of school, Irie goes back to her life at the reggae shop, at the record store with her dad and her sisters, and Jilly goes back to her mansion, and she gets thrown into this political world of arranged marriage and elite colleges, going to Cambridge, going to the UK for school. The two girls, despite it all, find a way back to each other, and they start to fall in love, which is really dangerous for them because women loving women in Jamaica in the 1970s was not acceptable. It was hardly acceptable to even be a woman in this time period, in this country, if you were not being used for sex. Going back to what I was talking about earlier, which was really frustrating and annoying to me to think about how much violence against women is seen throughout history, even for something as simple as just like being alive. Women are abused for existing in front of a man. So tensions are rising. The two rival political leaders in this time are about to close the polls, and the election night is coming, and everything really just falls to shit. And the two girls have to like choose their paths for the last few days that they have together before the election. Overall, I really liked Irie. Jilly I found to be one of the most annoying people I've ever read about in my entire life, which is unfortunate, but can happen with 17-year-old girls. When they grow up in a life of privilege, they tend to be a little annoying, and I know that from experience. But it still got 4 stars. I was still really compelled, especially with Irie's story, and it was really good. I feel like the pacing of it was bad at the end. Like the whole story like took place over a matter of days, and it really didn't jump ahead at all until like the last chapter jumped ahead. It did like 2 big time jumps. Other than that, 4 stars. I really liked the story, I liked the history, I liked the songs, I liked the revolution aspect of it. I liked all of that. So, The Songs of Irie. The next book I read was A Little Bit Country by Brian D. Kennedy. This is another book by an author that I met at the Midwest Bookish Fest, and I was actually reading this book while I went there, so I did get him to sign it. So cute! He wrote my name. He said, "So great to meet you, Midwest Bookish Fest 26, and he signed it and put little hearts on it. How cute! Thank you, Brian. Pleasure to meet you. And I got this little photo strip of our boys, of the main characters. This is a book about Emmett and Luke having a meet cute at this world's version of Dollywood and maybe falling in love. Emmett is from Chicagoland. He wants to be like the first gay country pop star, and Luke just wants to get through the day. Luke's family is struggling. His mom is sick, and he's kind of taken on the role of caretaker in his family. His stepdad is still around trying to make as much money as he can, but his mom can't work, and they have 2 other kids that they need to take care of. And so Luke is closeted and trying to work a factory job, but the homophobic tensions lead him to quitting. So Luke finds a new job at a restaurant in, well, it's not called Dolly World, Wanda World. Wanda Jean Stubbs is this universe's version of Dolly Parton. And Luke's family hates Wanda. Emmett loves Wanda. He loves her so much. He got a job at Wanda World, working at the Jamboree, playing guitar and singing. And so he moved down to Tennessee to work there for the summer. So going from Chicago, a place that's very open and inclusive and blue, to this small town in Tennessee that's very red is dangerous for him as an out gay person. And so him and Luke bump into each other quite literally, and they keep trying to run into each other. Well, Emmett keeps trying to pop it on Luke at the restaurant that he's working at. They strike up a friendship, and maybe more than that. But ultimately, Luke's family doesn't even know he works at Wanda World because his grandma, Verna Rose, had a huge falling out with Wanda. Luke wants to stay in a closet. Emmett wants to be with Luke. And so the whole point of the book is to have the conversation of being out and proud and being closeted and coming out. And I think it did a good job. I liked it. I liked it a lot, and it just really made me want some biscuits real bad. But it was cute, and it was fun, and it was a little silly, and a little whimsical, and very gay, and it was perfect, and it's bright orange. Next up for Yellow and Bi, I read I'll Be the One by Lila Lee. Oh my god, I didn't give you my rating for All Little Big Country. Hold on. 4.25. This one, spoiler alert, got 5 stars. Was it perfect? No. Was I giggling and kicking my feet? Yeah. And it was a good time. Fucking sue me. It's my rating system. I do what I want. It's subjective. I'll Be the One is about a girl named Sky who wants to be the first K-pop star who's plus size. She's grown up being fat shamed by everyone and their mother, but most importantly, her mother. And all she wants to do is sing and dance and be a K-pop star. And she's extremely talented. So she goes to the K-pop version of American Idol. It's a singing, dancing competition show. She auditions for both and gets in for both and meets a Korean model who is everyone's number one crush, Henry Cho. And they get paired together for their first dance activity. He is like surprisingly super nice, and there's always a ton of cameras on them or whatever, but he treats her like a normal person. Maybe they fall in love. She meets 2 girls at the audition, Tiffany and Lana, and they are in love, and they become quick friends with Sky, and Sky's very happy to meet other queer people who are Korean, and they bond, and they get rides with each other to the competition. Lana's going for singing, Tiffany's going for dance, so she's with one of them for as long as she's in the competition, and her and Henry start spending some time together, and overall it's just really cute, and I don't really know what else to say. The competition part was the main plot point of the book, was going through the competition, being fat shamed by the judges, one in particular being kind of a huge bitch, constantly being told that she needs to lose weight, and her saying, no, I'm good, because losing weight would be extremely unhealthy for me, and I could die. Crazy how that works, how people just have different body types. And starving yourself will make you unhappy and dead. Anyways, this book was really cute and fun and silly, and it was bi, so it got extra points for me. So I'll be the one. Next up, I read Margaret and the Mystery of the Missing Body by Megan Milks. This book jumps between 2 timelines of Margaret when she was a little girl, and then again when she's a teenager. So when she is little, she and her friends go around the neighborhood solving mysteries, and it has that kind of surrealism, speculative fiction aspect to it, where the mysteries end in something fantastical and ridiculous and silly, and it's about really just friendship and girl detectives. What was their detective name? It was really cute. Girls can solve anything. And then jumping between that and then Margaret as a teenager going through a severe eating disorder and being ostracized from all of her friends, she gets into a car accident. She gets admitted to a mental health facility, and she meets other people with eating disorders and goes through the program. I picked this one for trans representation. While she's going through this program, she's also exploring her sexuality and feeling uncomfortable in her body, partly because of the eating disorder, and then ultimately also because she's trans, but that doesn't even really get brought up until the epilogue. At the facility, there is a ghost, the ghost of the woman that opened the school that the eating disorder facility is now in. She haunts it. Her name's Nell, and she becomes kind of a catalyst to a lot of things. So it goes back to the speculative fiction. At the end, which was my favorite part, but everything in between was a little more difficult to get through. Margaret is not the most likable character. I gave this one a 3.25. It was a little bit better than just average. I liked the speculative fiction part at the end. That was bumping it up, and then the epilogue I really didn't like. It was so long, it went on forever, and it really started unraveling the story in an unhelpful way. But that's my opinion. Overall, 3.25. For our Blue Spine book, it was also representative of a queer book, and I was going back and forth between reading this book and Hated Rivalry, and I should have just read Hated Rivalry. But I read Olapapi by John Paul Brammer. The thing about this book is it's a memoir set up like an advice column, so every chapter is a question that the author is supposed to answer. The first half of this book, listening on audio, was pretty good. I was engrossed listening about him coming out, figuring out his sexuality, and kind of being taken advantage of by the queer community, and having issues figuring out who he really is, and questioning it, and the mental gymnastics going through that a queer person goes through to figure out, are they actually gay, what's going on. When I ran out of audiobook hours on Spotify, and I had to read it with my eyeballs, it was difficult to read, and I did end up having to read sections over and over again to really understand what's happening, because it can get a little confusing. Every answered question centered around a man. To put it bluntly, it's extremely male-centric. Every chapter was about what sexual encounter John Paul had and what that person did for him and to him. To the point that even one chapter, he flew to another country to be with a man and left that country with a different man. I don't feel like I got to know John Paul at all. I don't know the names of his parents. I don't know any of his friends. All I know is that he's had so much sex. So at the beginning, good and insightful and poignant, and then it really just got tired listening over and over again to him having sex and all of his advice coming from relationships or porn. I was disappointed with this one. This one, I gave 3 stars, but now talking about it again, I think I'm going to knock it down to 2. It was just hard after a while to get through, and it's not a thick book. It's not even 200 pages. I was disappointed, and at one point he gets asked a question of I live in another country and it's illegal to be gay, and I think my coworker has a crush on me and I have a crush on him, and what do I do? Then that's not really answered or addressed. The political climate of things aren't, I feel, well handled. Not that John Paul has to solve all the world's issues, but if you're gonna bring it up, you need to follow through, in my opinion. I will not be going to John Paul for any advice anytime soon, but this is the book I read for queer. For I, which also line up with Indigo, which to me isn't a real color. Intersex, for lack of a better word, by Thea Hillman. Before I get into this book, I want to talk about the color indigo and how much I hate it as a colorblind person. I believed that indigo was a shade of purple for many a year, and once I was wearing pants that were listed online as indigo, and I went upstairs, and my mom complimented my lipstick. And he said, thanks, I was wearing purple lipstick. I couldn't wear it with these pants because I didn't want purple on purple. And she said, those pants aren't purple. I was like, but they're indigo. She's like, yeah, it's a shade of blue. Well, what the fuck? Who was gonna tell me? My mom, apparently, when I was 19, decided to tell me indigo was a shade of blue. So indigo isn't real, and if you disagree, if you were an indigo apologist, leave. I don't want your opinion. Indigo doesn't matter. Why does the rainbow have blue, bluish purple, and purple, no pink? That's homophobic. Anyways, intersex, for lack of a better word. This book was delightful. It's a collection of essays by Thea Hillman, who is a phenomenal writer, mind you. This book was so good. The little, they're not long essays. Some of them are a page or 2 or longer. But in the way that Olapapi was about sex, this is about sex in such a different way that it's not all-consuming and it's not male-centric, and it is truly more about Thea exploring her body and understanding what her body is like and having sex and having fun and her medical diagnoses and figuring out who she is. And even if she's going to sex parties, it felt more about Thea than it did about the sex party. And that's, I think, the difference between this book and Olapapi. This one felt more about the sex and not about the author. This one feels like it's about the author. Overall, very good. Also extremely short.
150 pages. You get so much out of it about Thea's life and her figuring out, even into adulthood, what it means to be intersex and joining activism groups for it, educating people, still finding herself and her partner, and getting off hormones. She'd been on hormones her whole life and getting off of them to figure out what her body is like naturally without hormones. And it does talk about the tragedy that almost all babies born intersex have some kind of surgery as an infant that forever alters their body in a way that doesn't align with them as they grow, in a way that injures them as they grow, in a way that stops them from experiencing pleasure when they become an adult. Like children having genital surgeries when they're born intersex grow up unable to have an orgasm because of the surgery. Their natural body knows what to do being born intersex, but that's taken away from them completely. Not to get political again, but everything is political. Everyone on the right is so concerned about children having gender affirming care if they're trans and being against that, but they don't care at all about intersex children having surgery that forever alters their body in a way that's negative to the child, but more gender conforming to the rest of society. So the issue is not trans people. The issue is intersex people don't have autonomy. And that's the issue, is that they are receiving non-consensual surgeries as an infant that forever alters their ability to enjoy life, which is, yeah, it's in the fucking Constitution. Anyways, this book was phenomenal. I gave it 4 stars. You should read it. Came out in 2008, and I still feel it's extremely relevant to today. And it uses the same language that we use now. So it's nothing new, but it's just as important now as it was almost 20 years ago. Last book I read is Loveless by Alice Oseman. This is the person that brought us the Heartstopper graphic novel series. And this book is about Georgia, who loves romance novels, but can't understand why she's not finding love. Because I already knew going in that she was asexual, the first, third of this book really dragged on for me for her to figure it out. So I'm like, girl, come on, we all know. Yeah, okay, so it does mention on the back that she encounters the terms of aromantic and asexual, and those seem to be floating around, essentially. She's uncertain about her feelings. It wasn't a surprise for that to happen, but I feel like it was supposed to be, so I feel like just that being something that took so long for her to discover took away from the book. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I don't know if I'm losing the spark inside of me that enjoys things, or if I'm just becoming jaded, or if these are just truly that obvious. That, her best friend, Pip, and their other best friend, Jason, all go to this college together, and Georgia's the only one that ends up with a roommate, and her roommate's name is Rooney. Rooney's very out there, and, just the things that these people say, I'm like, duh, it feels obvious. But those aren't, discussed until, the very end. So I'm like, isn't it obvious? Have I just read too many books? Am I losing my spark of whimsy? What's going on? So that's my issue. Things felt obvious to me, so I don't know if that's a me problem. I need to do some introspection and maybe a cleanse. Regardless, it was still cute. It still had a good sense of community, and it was so friendships focused, which is good. Also, I feel like Loveless is a mistitle. Throughout 90% of it, there is love. Calling someone who's asexual or aromantic loveless, I think, is unfair, because there are so many different ways that a person can be loved that isn't sexual or romantic. That's my opinion. That's my soapbox. That's it. That's Pride. That's my wrap on Pride Month. 7 books. Overall, good. I think knowing the sexualities of everyone going into it did take me away from the story. The point for me was to celebrate each sexuality, but the point of a lot of these was about figuring out their sexuality, so me already knowing what it was impeded my ability to enjoy the whimsy of the book. I understand that I'm an issue, okay? I know it. You know it. We all know it. There's so much to say about Pride and how much it means to me and how much it means to us as a country. I couldn't possibly get the words out without crying again. I will say, happy Pride. Deserve safety and security and love and feeling authentic in yourself. And I hope that anyone who tries to take that away from you gets punched in the nuts. Be empathetic, be understanding, and don't cut people off that belong in this group. There would be no LGB without the T. There would be no G without the L. We are all so interconnected. We have to fight for each other. My battery's about to die. Don't stop fighting. Keep resisting. Keep loving. And next up is Disability Pride. We're reading I'll Look So Hot in a Coffin by Carla Sosinoko, A Time to Dance by Padma Venkatraman, and Breathe and Count Back from 10 by Natalia Sylvester. I don't have time to tell you what those are about, but if they sound interesting to you, you should read them. We'll be here for Disability Pride for July. Happy Pride! I love you so freaking much. Go read something.